Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I am diving into a topic that I feel like I've been going over a decent amount lately. Different guests. I had my recent guest episode that I was on in terms of building phase, but what I really wanted to hone in on today is my updated approach to building phases for body comp and health. And I think that's a key distinction here. We're trying to maximize body composition, muscle and body fat, and health as well too. Okay. And so I have had some things that have changed over the last years. And I want to describe how to approach this. And again, maybe my old approach, what the new approach looks like, and then some other things that we want to consider and just some nuances of all this. But first, if you are interested in improving your body composition, my body recomp checklist is for you. It's completely free. There's 10 things. I go over the most important things to maximize muscle growth, but also stay lean and get leaner as well too over time. I go over the two types of body recomp, what body recomp is, and some mistakes, and then just some client examples as well too. Again, that's completely free. The link to that is in the show notes, so make sure you go and check that out. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. And again, it is my new approach to building phases. First, one thing what I want to go over here is I want to we need to start thinking about the body in terms of it's going to be in two stages, right? It's either going to be building up or it's going to be breaking down. And again, there's a lot of things we can do in that process to get there, but what we do is going to be the most important. So we have building up. So this is fueling properly, maintenance or a small surplus, optimizing metabolism, supporting hormones, enhancing recovery, feeling stronger, more energized, more resilient, right? So we're building it up. And then we have the other state, which is breaking down. This is going to be an energy deficit, caloric intake below maintenance. This equals not optimizing metabolism and hormones, higher stress on the body, reduced recovery, lower energy and performance. Again, this is necessary at times for fat loss, but this is not a place to stay long term. So we're going to be in between these two states, right? And I think a lot of times, so again, you're either breaking your body down or you're building up. And a lot of times people think that the only way they can build up is if they're in this surplus, right? And then there's maintenance. People have maintenance calories, maintenance of weight, maintenance, your body's not changing at all. And again, even in that process, we're still going to be building up because we should be fueling properly during that. We're going to be optimizing our metabolism while we're at maintenance calories. We're going to be supporting hormones. We're going to be enhancing recovery. We should be getting stronger. We should be more energized. We should be building our resilience. And again, you could build your resilience a little bit in terms of breaking down. But again, people like have these three distinct things of, oh, they're fat loss, they're at maintenance, or they're building. I just see people do this all the time where, oh, hey, I'm just maintaining, or they hear maintenance and they think nothing's happening. But again, that couldn't be further from the truth there. And again, I think this concept of we're at maintenance, nothing's happening was not going to be the case. Again, your body is always adapting to what you're doing to it. And so again, if we can habits and we can get you into this mindset, this is going to change a little bit here. But again, I think it's understanding that really at the end of the day, our bodies is going to be going back and forth between these two states, building up, breaking down. You can call them anabolic, catabolic, whatever you want to call it there, but that's easier. So I just wanted to bring that up first because I think that's super important to just set the tone here of why I'm change my thought on building phases and my new approach. Okay, so let's start with the old approach. What was my old approach from a building phase perspective? So first, you had to push your scale weight up to gain muscle. Okay, so that was the first thing that I was like, hey, you have to be in a surplus to build muscle. But over time, I've realized that, again, we don't have to be in a surplus. Now, is that going to be the one that's going to absolutely maximize muscle growth? Probably. But again, is that always the case that people want there? So again, the surplus is pushing your scale weight up is probably going to be the best in terms of building muscle. But that doesn't mean that if you're around your maintenance calories, again, maintenance calories, not maintenance of body weight. We'll dive into the intricacies of this. That doesn't mean that you can't build any muscle. And again, I think we can build a lot more muscle than we think being well fueled. And again, we're still on that the building up side of the equation here. If we were to, hey, you're at maintenance versus a small surplus, again, you're probably going to, at the end of the day, build muscle a little bit quicker in a small surplus. But again, is that always the thing that we want to do? That's again something that we need to consider here. And are we trying to absolutely maximize muscle growth at all costs? Again, something that we need to consider. And then a deficit, you can certainly build muscle in a deficit, but this is where things start to get a little bit more nuanced in terms of if you can or can't. Best if you're super lean and you have a lot of muscle already, again, you're not going to be able to build any muscle in deficit. Your goal is to, when you're at that stage, try to maintain as much of it as possible, right? Like your sole purpose should be to not lose any muscle. And again, I should clarify this, as Kyle Baxter says, not use it for fuel, because that's essentially what you're doing there if you lose muscle. For some people, they are able to add a little bit of lean body mass, add a little bit of muscle when they're breaking down. But again, that's a short-term thing and not something that we can do forever. Again, that's your kind of classic body recomp, simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain. But again, those are just very specific situations so that you can do that. And just again, as the deficit gets larger and larger, the amount of muscle you can gain goes down in a state where it's already less than ideal than in a surplus or at maintenance. Okay. So that's the first thing, what I just said there, that just basically that just throws that old approach out of the way. We don't necessarily have to really force pushing our weight up. And again, I think this is like noticeable weight gain. Again, I'm going to go over what may happen here in terms of my new approach, but purposely trying to push your weight up, at least from a noticeable standpoint of, hey, you need to gain 0.25% of your body weight per week. And if you don't do that, you need to increase your calories. That's what I mean there by that. And as I just talked about, there's some situations where we don't even need to do that. Second, the old approach, push your scale weight up the entire time and week over week. If your rate of gain slowed, we needed to increase calories. So not only was it like, hey, you need to gain weight, like purposely gain weight, but that needs to be done week over week. And if it's not, then we need to increase our calories to make sure that you're on that trend of that rate of gain there. Again, just leading to more body fat than was necessary in that process. Because again, we're trying to push weight up every single week. So that I did that with some clients. I did that with myself, right? Where it was like, oh crap, weight was down this week from an average standpoint, not even a lot, just a little bit. Or hey, my weight was down one day. Oh, I need to overeat now. I need a ton of calories. I need to see it continue to trend up. So not only did we push weight gain, but I also made sure that it was, hey, week over week, you needed to see your weight go up. And if it didn't, it was like, oh, hey, we're under eating calories. We need to increase it there. And again, which I'm going to hit on, building muscle is just such a slow process. And then 3, the other big thing was like, no cardio, no movement. Okay. So it was like, oh, hey, cardio is going to kill your gains. We're trying to build muscle in this phase. Why would we do cardio if it's going to kill your gains? So again, that was something that I would do. And I didn't program cardio for clients. So not only for myself, but clients as well too. So these are mistakes I made with myself and with clients. And again, it was because it killed your gains. And I remember there was a time when in my previous builds, I like didn't even want to play hockey because I was like, oh, that's going to kill that's too much activity and I'm going to lose muscle because I'm playing hockey. How stupid is that? And then again, even steps like, oh, if I move a lot, then I'm going to burn more calories. That's not good. It's going to hurt muscle growth. And so I need to not move. And again, when we look at body comp and health, that was a big mistake there. So what did all this lead to? It led to more fat gain than necessary. So by purposely pushing weight up for everyone, because we're trying to build muscle, again, maybe the situations weren't their individual context. They weren't in the right spot or they didn't need to gain weight to build muscle, right? Maybe they had a little bit more body fat. And so because of that, there was more fat gain than was necessary. And then again, when you look at the lack of cardio, lack of movement, gaining more body fat than was necessary in that process. And then when you also look at hey, we're pushing weight up week over week, again, something where that was just not necessary. And that led to more fat gain in the long run, which leads to more frequent cuts that interrupt momentum. I really think there's something to, when it comes to building muscle, stringing together a long period of time where you can just push training, have things dialed in, and you stay in that for a long time. And again, eventually I want to get clients to the point to where they're not dieting more than 3 to 6 months out of the year. And if we're 6 months being on the high end, ideally it's 3 months or less. And for some, maybe it's not even that. But again, that frequent interruption there is going to hurt muscle growth, right? I think you need to stay consistent with being in that state to really get the best kind of progress out of it versus breaking it up of, oh, hey, I'm going to be in a surplus and then I'm going to be in a deficit. And we're talking kind of extremes here with that. But anytime we go to that breaking down state, we're not going to put ourselves in the best position to build muscle. And again, it interrupts momentum. And I think that's the big thing. Now, I'm saying this, there is some benefit to getting into a fat loss phase. So I don't want to ever say that you shouldn't ever cut, because you should. And I think from a long-term health perspective, getting into a cut every so often is beneficial. Now, depending on where you're at body composition wise and how you're feeling, that's going to depend on how often it is. But ideally, I'm going to get clients to the point to where I said 3 to 6 months, but ideally 3 months or less in a fat loss phase per year. And again, this depends on how lean you want to get as well too, and how much weight you need to lose. But eventually is kind of what I'm saying there. For example, I've been doing this new approach since November of 2023. We're coming in on almost a year and a half of not fat loss dieting, which is awesome for many reasons. But I will need to get into a fat loss phase at some point. And then on top of that, half of the fat loss phase is spent losing the fat you didn't need to gain in the first place. So that's the other big thing here is now we're spending 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks just cutting off the body fat that we lost when we didn't even need to gain it. So then you get to this point to where now you're spending more time cutting. You're only cutting you're spending a lot of time just cutting off the body fat that you didn't need to gain in the first place. And so you're just wasting a lot of time here. So again, that's our big thing there is we're just spending a ton of time dropping body fat. And again, we're not in a good position. When I talked about the building muscle, yes, you can do it to an extent in a deficit, but that's going to be the least optimal. In some cases, it's not going to be something that anybody can do anyways. So again, we're just spending a lot of time here where we're not building our body up. And I talked about the benefits of building our body up. We're spending more time breaking it down than is needed. There's going to be more yo-yoing between phases. So now it's like you're going back and forth. You gain a little bit of weight. Oh crap, now I got to swing the other way. And this pendulum just swings back and forth to these extremes when it's not necessary. And again, I don't think that's going to be great from a overall health and body composition standpoint. Again, although even though people are like, hey, you don't want to be in a deficit all the time, but being in a surplus where you're really pushing your weight up also is not great from a body composition and health perspective. And then you swing the other way, again, not great from a body composition standpoint and probably not great from a overall health standpoint to be in a large deficit. So you yo-yo back and forth. And I think those things have some issues, some health issues long-term as well too, from a gut health perspective, body composition, all those things. And then also the lack of cardio movement, poor cardiovascular fitness, which is not great from an overall health standpoint and is probably going to impact your overall health, body composition in the process as well too. So again, poor cardiovascular health on top of it. So this equals not great for body comp, metabolism, or health. We're not going to have our best body composition by doing this. We're not going to be maximizing our metabolic health, our metabolism, because we're swinging back and forth, because we're spending a lot of time not building it up. And again, we're also in a surplus, and our overall health as well too. These kind of states of being on the extremes of these, I don't think is great from an overall health perspective. And obviously poor cardiovascular fitness, again, not great. Okay, so that's the old approach, what it led to, why I think it's suboptimal there. Now, and again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also hit on what I'm more concerned with in building phases and where, again, you can apply, because again, some people are going to need to be in a surplus. And that's my spoiler alert there with that, but we'll talk about that. So now my new approach is, first, some clients don't need to purposely push weight up to build, okay? For an example, higher body fat levels would be a big example there, is of someone who doesn't need to purposely push weight up in a build. So higher body fat levels, and maybe you don't necessarily want to maximize, like you don't want to have a ton of muscle. Again, I don't see the point in us being like, hey, you need to gain this weight to build muscle. Again, if you want to be like super jacked and bodybuilder, okay, then again, maybe we need to alter our expectations here a little bit. Again, I still think there's better ways to do it, but again, some clients don't need to purposely push weight up to build. However, you may see your weight stabilize a bit coming out of a fat loss diet from eating more food. So this is where people get themselves tripped up on, and they get stuck in this no man's land. Is they hear that, oh, Jeff said, hey, I don't need to push my weight up. I was in a fat loss phase. I gained some weight in the first week or two. I'm in a surplus. I'm going to be gaining all this body fat. Now I'm going to go back to my old calories. That's not what I'm saying. You're going to see your weight stabilize. We're not, what we don't want to see, again, you're just going to see your weight stabilize a little bit in that process. So that's not what we're talking about. So if you are at a fat loss diet, you increase your calories, you're going to see your weight come up a little bit in most cases. And this is like glycogen increase, just more food in your system at any one time, more sodium, right? Like all these things are going to cause your weight to come up a little bit. And so we need to not equate that with fat gain or, hey, I'm in a surplus. That's again, your weight just stabilizing to a little bit more food there. So again, some people don't need to even push their weight up, but don't equate that with not seeing your weight come up at all. Slight scale increases are okay over time, but they're not mandatory in the short term. So what I mean by that is, if you're building muscle, like that is going to be tissue that you're adding. So again, over time, we may see your weight come up. So again, this doesn't mean that you're just going to be at 155 and then, the entire time you're out of a deficit, you're just going to be at 155. Again, you may slowly see your weight trend up over time. And again, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Now, someone would say, well, you're not at your maintenance then, or you're not, again, tissue, there's a difference between maintenance of body weight and maintenance calories. Again, maintenance of body weight just means you're keeping it within 3 to 5%, but maintenance calories again is where you're getting it, you're bringing in enough energy. And if we're doing things right, when we're bringing in enough energy, we should be building muscle in that process. So what does that mean? You're going to probably see your scale weight come up over time, but we're just not looking for like, you're not going to see it come up like, oh, hey, a pound a month or something like that, or some set number. But again, you may see it trend up over time. So for example, in my situation here where I haven't really been pushing weight gain, but over time, my weight has shifted month over month to where it was like 163 to 165. Now it's more 164 to 166. Okay. I'm not concerned about that there. Right. So again, that's something that may happen. Again, this may just come down to you're building muscle that is going to be tissue that you're adding. But so again, it's just because we're not purposely pushing your weight up doesn't mean you're going to not see it come up a little bit. And if you're scared of that, you probably are going to hurt your muscle gain in that process. So again, it's okay to see your scale weight slightly shift up a little bit there again. And what we do in that process is the most important. If you slightly see it shift up over time, say in 6 months, you were 155, now maybe it's again 157 to 159 or something like that. Like I'm not concerned about that, especially if you were weight training, pushing your training, sleeping well, like all the lifestyle stuff, eating enough protein. again, we could be safe to say that you added some muscle in that process. So again, some slight scale increases are going to happen and they're okay. But we're just in the short term, we're just not trying to push your weight up week over week. That's essentially what we're getting at here. So it's not mandatory in the short term, but over time, we may see it slightly trend up. A new approach, again, we want to adopt a high energy flux lifestyle. So cardio movement outside of the gym. So this is going to be more beneficial for your cardiovascular system and just gives your body a place to move the food around in your body, right? That's the best way I can explain it. Whereas if you're not moving, it's like everything just gets backed up a little bit, right? It has nowhere to go and it's going to start to get partitioned to fat. So again, we want to adopt a high energy flux lifestyle. So this is cardio, hitting our minimum of cardio. Again, for some people, it could be more, some people could be less. It just depends on your goals. Movement outside the gym, we're hitting anywhere from 8 to 10K steps plus per day. And then you're doing some movement that you enjoy outside of the gym, right? So we're adopting this high energy, high movement lifestyle where we're just staying active there. And that's going to allow you to stay leaner, still build muscle, and also be able to consume a little bit more calories as well too. That's also one of the benefits of adopting this. So we're adopting that high movement lifestyle. Now, for leaner clients and or lofty muscle gain goals, so this is very key distinction here, shorter periods of intentional gain may be necessary, right? But then what we want to do, and this is again the big kind of change, is then we hold steady where you feel good, energy, training, and biofeedback are solid. And again, you have a physique that you're like, okay, this isn't my greatest, but I still feel pretty good, right? So again, for some people, and this is a better approach versus always pushing weight up. So again, this could be where, hey, we're going to push your weight up for a couple months. And again, not just 0.25%, maybe 1% of body weight per month, maybe a little bit lower than that. Then we get to say a certain weight range. And then now we just hold steady there. And again, now maybe we shift to that slight increase over time versus week over week. Okay. So this could be something where, again, you start at 155. We're going to purposely push your weight up to say 160, 165. And then from there, now we're going to hold steady. And then that's where you see that you either hold steady there, or again, you slowly start to see it trend up over time. So now you can see where some of the nuance comes in here with this, where it's not only either, hey, you're gaining or we just maintain. There are examples where you do probably need to push your weight up a little bit. The mistake is just continuing to do that, right? Oh, hey, I want to build muscle, so I'm just going to continue week over week, month over month, continue to gain weight. I think once you get to a certain spot where you feel good, all these things are in check, then you can hold steady for a while. And that's going to prolong the time that you can build muscle and not be in that state of breaking down in the energy deficit, which again, we talked about is probably going to be good for lean body mass perspective. Again, just to sum this part of it up, we have some clients that we're not really going to push weight up at all. Okay. But you may see a slight stabilization there. And again, this is going to be people that have higher body fat levels. Maybe you lost some body weight and now you are not as lean as you want to be, but you know that, hey, if I don't want to keep pushing fat loss right now, but I do want to build my body up a bit. And again, when we say build your body up, we're not just talking muscle. We can build it up in other ways that I talked about initially. So again, you may see that happen where your weight kind of stabilizes and it slightly comes up for the first week or two because of that. From there, some slight scale increases are okay over time, but they're not mandatory in the short term. Okay. So again, in that situation, you may find that, again, let's say you dieted from 200 down to 155. You finish your fat loss phase at 155. You eat a little bit more food, you go to your actual maintenance calories, maybe your weight shifts from 157 to 160 in that first week or two. Again, it's not fat gain, that's just your body doing that. And then again, maybe from there, it's like now our weight's it starts between 157 and 160. And then over a 6 to 12 month build, now you're between 160 and 165. That is something that we may see happen there. On top of that, we're adopting that high energy flux lifestyle with that person. Now they're going to be able to continue to eat more food there. But now we have the person where they're leaner and or they have really lofty muscle gain goals. So again, you're someone who's, I really want to build muscle. I'm lean. I just want to really build some muscle. Well, for you, let's say they're at 155. Like I said, we may build them up to 165, 170. And then from there, we'll hold steady. And then again, maybe over time, their weight shifts from 170 to 175. Or something like that, right? But in that process, we're making sure that they feel good, energy levels are good, biofeedback solid, training's going really well, versus just always pushing their weight up to say 200 pounds or something like that, right? Where again, you're going to gain excess body fat in that process, and then you have to cut it off. Whereas now, instead of being at 200 pounds, you're at 170 to 175, much easier cut to get to 160, where now you're going to look a lot leaner, right there. Whereas if you go to 200, it's like to get you to actually be lean, again, it's going to take a little bit of work there. And again, there's obviously some more nuance that goes into it. But what this leads to is you can stay in productive phases longer outside of fat loss. This is going to lead to better health, performance, body comp, muscle growth, and less time fat loss dieting in that breaking down state, which again is good at periods of time, but we want to try to limit that as much as possible because again, that's just not going to be great from an overall just metabolism, thriving perspective there. So what am I more concerned with in building phases now than in the past? Again, it was just all about weight gain. That was a big thing. Now, more concerned about just not seeing any downward trends in average weight across weeks. Again, maybe from one week to the next, you might see a downward trend, but over time, if we zoom out, is your weight at least stabilizing or is it trending up over time? The biggest things, we just don't want to see that trend down. If it is, we probably need to add some more calories into your plan here, because at that point you're in a deficit. So I just don't want to see any downward trends in average weight across weeks. That's a big thing. No matter what your goal ends up being, that's the main thing that we don't want to see happen in this phase, is that downward trend in weight for weeks on end. Again, maybe 2 weeks it happens. I'm not concerned about that. I'm just more so, let's zoom out. Okay, hey, we look at your last 2 month trend and you're trending down. All right, you're in some sort of a deficit. Again, that's not going to be great for building our body up. We want to make sure energy, digestion, performance are in a good spot and your body comp feels good enough, right? So we're making sure that you feel good in this process. Training performance is huge. I want to make sure you're able to push training. You feel really, really good in your training, but also digestion's moving slowly, right? You don't feel like you're force feeding yourself. Your bowel frequency is about once a day, good quality bowel movements, no other issues, bloating, etc. Energy's good. You're just feeling really good throughout the day there, right? That's the big things that we're looking at. And then performance in other areas, whatever that may be for you there. From a female perspective, we want to make sure you have healthy menstrual cycles during this period of time. Men, we want to make sure your libido's in a good spot, right? And women too. So that's what we're looking at in this process. Again, if we do that, where we don't have any trends down, these other things are getting checked off, we're in a really good spot here. And then obviously training is progressing. That is absolutely vital in this phase, is seeing your training continue to push up and progress. That's not happening. Something's wrong. We need to look at that, right? So we want to make sure training is progressing there. If any of these are off, we may need to bump calories, or I guess I shouldn't say bump calories. We need to manipulate your calories in some form or fashion. But again, I guess for this case, it's if your weight's trending down for multiple weeks on end, 4 to 8 weeks, you need to find ways to consume more calories. Training's not going well. Again, I'm not going to straight be like, hey, we need to bump calories, but we're going to look into that of, is it meal timing? Is it food quality or macros? Is it any of these other things here that we need to potentially improve? But yeah, so that's what we're going to do there. That's where we'll make the adjustment somewhere along the lines from a caloric standpoint if any of these are off. Your diet quality, lifestyle habits, training, and movement are the most important, right? So this is going to put your body in the right conditions to build muscle. Yes, being in a small surplus, yeah, that's going to be great. But again, what are the actual lifestyle things that we're doing? If you are in a small surplus, but your diet quality sucks, you're not getting enough protein, you're eating a lot of processed food, your carbs and fats are off, you have super high stress, your circadian rhythm and sleep is just dog crap, training's not pushing forward, and you're not really moving. I don't care that you're in a small surplus. It doesn't matter to me. That is secondary and maybe even further down the line than getting these in check, right? So again, now if we look at this, hey, no downward trend in average weight across weeks. We're pushing training. We look at your food log, your diet, and everything's good there. We're continuing to work on your sleep, circadian rhythm, stressors, like managing that, mental health's in a good spot. That's going to lead to more muscle growth over time than somebody who's not focusing on those things, but they're in a small surplus, right? But a lot of people will be in a building phase and they just go straight to the calorie surplus and their weight gain, and where's that trending at there. So that's the approaches, how I go about it. A few extra things that I want to add on here. Muscle, and the main reason that I've come to this is like muscle gain is slower and smaller than most expect. Okay. So if you gain 20 pounds in your build, the amount of that is muscle is going to be a lot smaller than you think. It's not going to be 20 pounds of muscle, because muscle is just so freaking slow. The quicker you gain that 20 pounds, the less of it that's going to be muscle. Now, yes, somebody who's completely new to training and they're like super lean and small, again, 20 pounds, maybe more of that's going to be muscle, but still the shorter you gain that 20 pounds, less of it that is going to be muscle. But again, at the end of the day, muscle is just so freaking slow. And I just feel like when we focus just on weight, when it comes to adding muscle, we are setting ourselves up for failure here. Even 1 to 5 pounds of added muscle makes a bigger difference than you think. So again, this is why with the scale weight, we have to be careful with where that's going and our expectations here. And even with the first point I made here, people are like, oh, they're 170. I want to be 220 lean with 10% body fat and muscle. It's like, that is going to take you so freaking long to get there. Like, you have no idea. Again, if your thought is like, oh, hey, I need to get to 220 in weight, you're just going to be putting on a lot of body fat, and then you're not going to be happy with your look. And then you're going to be like, I need to put on more muscle, or whatever you think it is. I don't know. But that's also going to lead to more issues down the line. So again, even 1 to 5 pounds of added muscle is going to make a massive difference on your physique, especially the more muscle you have as well too, right? But we do have to understand that you're not going to look your leanest during this phase. Discomfort is part of it. So if you think you're going to walk around shredded with 6-pack abs and be as lean as possible and still add as much muscle as you want, and again, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to be your absolute leanest. Even if we take this approach, you're still going to not be your absolute leanest. But again, if we don't take this approach, then this is where I see people quit too early and then they go back to fat loss, and that's how they live their life there, right? And that's not a great spot to be, because your physique is not getting any better. Your body composition is not getting any better. Your health's not getting any better by doing that. So we have to understand that we're not going to be our absolute leanest. Now, Again, that doesn't mean we're going to get sloppy, because that's not good either. But again, we have to reset our expectations. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with clients where I have a client now specifically where she gets down to 130s. She gets super hungry. She has a lot of cravings, hunger. She wants to work on that, but she's also very lean at that 130. So then we go to a building phase. Hey, if you want to continue to build more muscle, change your physique, like you're going to need to push your weight up. But then she gets to 135, 140. She gets super uncomfortable and she gets in her head and things. And then now she wants to go back and cut. So then she ends up being in the spot where it's like, she wants to live a certain lifestyle, but also have a certain physique. And it's like, there's a mismatch there and you have to find that. And again, part of it's just understanding that like, you're not always going to be your leanest during this phase. And you need to accept that and also figure out why that is there. A little out of the scope of practice here. But here's my takeaway here. Also, if you want to build a good amount of muscle and are at a low body weight, you're going to have to gain some weight. There's no way around this. You're not going to be able to maintain your way there. If you're 140 pounds and you want to get to 170, 180, 190 with muscle and have a good muscular physique, again, you're not going to get there by maintaining and just keeping your weight at 140, 145. You are going to need to gain some weight. That comes back to where somebody is starting at there. I think we're at about 30 minutes now. What do you think of this approach? Is it similar for you now? Is it different? Let me know. Message me on Instagram there. But hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gave you some insight into this. Again, my takeaways from this is not everybody needs to push their scale weight up. We don't need to do it the entire time, but some people still need to gain some weight to build muscle. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure we're eating enough, right? My colleague, too many of the women who come to me are under eating to begin with, and then they think they can gain muscle because they had a slight scale bump going from 17 to 1800 calories. And I said, yes, you still need to make sure you're eating enough, right? That is still totally an issue if you're not eating enough. And so we need to figure out what that is, right? And again, this is where I have a coach can be super helpful. So that's it for this episode. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this. If you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, that will help more people find it. If you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, Hoeh, and then let me know if you have any questions on this episode, any questions in the future, whatever it may be. And then lastly, if you're stuck in this and you want to try this new approach and you want to see if it's right for you, a free 30-minute strategy calls for you. That link to that is in the show notes. That's it for this episode, and I'll chat with you guys next time.